so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life, well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting, especially since they're helping to fund all the cool projects we have in the works, such as the Positive Head app, the docuseries that I'm intending to begin shooting within the next year, and whatever else we dream up over here at Positive Headquarters to help spread consciousness across the planet. Now, if you're short on time or just super excited for today's topic and want to dive right in and skip these ads, feel free to fast forward about
4 minutes
to get right into today's show. That being said, I strongly encourage you to listen because the reason I'm passionate about my sponsors is because they've made a huge impact in my own life, which is why I've aligned with these organizations. And I firmly believe they can do the same for you too. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. The second sponsor I'm extremely passionate about promoting is Purium. It's no mystery that bringing your mind, body, and spirit into balance is necessary if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and greatest version of themselves. And as of recording this, it's been about 4 months since I started taking the Purium Core 4 superfood products every day. And I can honestly and sincerely say my mind, body, and spirit have never felt more in alignment. If you've been looking for a way to easily get superfoods into your system every day with a simple plan that can help you reestablish a healthier foundation and relationship with food, I cannot recommend for you to start with the Purium 40-Day Ultimate Nutrition Plan, which includes a 10-day metabolic reset and cleanse enough. I spent personally months researching Purium before I jumped in, and now myself and over 150 other positive heads have started with the 40-Day Ultimate Nutrition Plan, and many of us have continued taking the Core 4 products on an ongoing basis daily ever since. I personally intend to take them for the rest of my life because they played a huge role transforming my vibrational state. If you decide to do it, it'll cost you just over $7 a day for the first 40 days and only about $5 a day after. But if you do it the way that I recommend you to do it, the smartest and most beneficial way, it won't cost you anything. I recommend you to just look at where you can reallocate money you are already spending on food each day. Essentially, you're just going to swap out the unhealthiest stuff you're in the habit of purchasing in exchange for Purium superfoods. And this way, it costs you nothing to participate in the transformation and cleanse. And it creates exponential benefit because now you've replaced something that lowers your vibration with something that is going to make you feel super high in the healthiest kind of way. Just take a few minutes, see where you can cut out $5 to $7 a day and commit to doing it. It's that simple. Also, for support, we'll be doing a big group transformation with other positive heads and soul family once each month for support. So I recommend, going right now, ordering your 40-day Ultimate Nutrition Plan bundle so that you have it when the next group transformation starts. Procrastination is not your friend. Order it now. You can thank me later, because I can assure you, you will not be sorry you've decided to send a message to the universe that you're ready to step up your vibrational game and reclaim your health sovereignty. Just head over to ishoppurium.com. That's spelled ISHOPPURIUM.com. Be sure to use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for either $50 off or a 25% discount, whichever is greater. And also, if you want to learn more details about the Purium products, why I'm so passionate about promoting them beforehand, you can go check out several videos I shot discussing these things in greater detail. You can also hear my interview with the very inspiring founder, David Sandoval. Much, much more over at positivehead.com/transformation. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Pow Wow episode, I have a very special guest. I have my good friend, Sevan Bomar, back on the show. This has become an annual tradition at this point. Sevan has been on 3 previous episodes, number 49, number 54, number 504, if you want to dig in the archives. And if you haven't heard any of those, Sevan is a self-development specialist, inventor, author, just a all-around amazing soul who holds many keys of deep and profound knowledge pertaining to the ultimate nature of reality. Super excited it's that time of year again. Sevan, welcome back, my friend.
Oh, man, this is it right now, right? Like 3 times the charm. Back on Positive Head. It's like my home away from home. Every time I get the massive download and it's about ready to release to the reality, it's like, come on, just call up Brandon. I'm like, yo, it's ready. It's ready.
Time.
And it's like, it's
the
time
next
again.
Delivery.
And here we are. So
the timer
thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, man. So we started, very preliminarily before we turned on the mic and turned on the recording here. I was like, okay, what is it going to be? What's the download? What are we going to talk about? And you hit me with a bunch of things that are like, all right, this is going to be quite the rabbit hole. And it's just a matter of where to start, really, because as far as like your backstory and some of that stuff, we have covered that on previous episodes. So I'll allow you guys to go back. You're going to want to go check those episodes out anyway. I'm confident after you hear this one. But let's just dive right in. What's been bubbling up out of these, several different things we kind of touch base on? What's bubbling up for you the most? I know you just had a really big incarnation anniversary. Happy birthday, my friend, first of all.
Thank you.
And it's, cycles are there for a reason, and it seems like you're entering a new one for sure. And I think all of us are. It's like, there's so much happening, there's so much energy bubbling up. What's at the top of your bubbles? What's happening?
Well, that's a good question. The epochs are real. Like, these things click like a clock. So it's almost like, well, it's not almost, it is like we have entered this new time. And we now have like just a whole new segment in front of us. And so almost like, how they say you've learned, now you must unlearn. So there's a lot about that previous paradigm that's just kind of like shedding off. And then there's this new aspect of how we're connecting and how we're unifying that's coming. And actually, it's already here. It's in the wind. So regardless if a person heard me today and heard some of the jewels that are going to be dropped today, they would still get it somehow, because it's not contingent on one person. Thank goodness. And this is also a very important time for us to receive it, because we're also on the cusp of the impending, just the same story, right? Like, we like to get our stories rather interesting. We like to tie our ends into the beginning, and it reaches this climax, like what you see in movies. And then even the ends, which are like a sum total of all of what we experienced. And so sometimes you feel like either you're just hanging on for dear life, or you're off autopilot and you have this really under control. And that's what we would say is the adept, right? Like entering into that realm of maturity and really seeing, okay, I can't remote control life for infinity. I'm going to have to actually get behind the helm and really, dial this back in and see what's going on. So What's been coming up for me a lot is actually sovereignty. Like I always love to start everything off with that now. It just comes natural. And it's because it's a real move that we have to make. And we're going to do it. We're going to make it. And we set up a mission called Sovereignty 2020. So we plan to actually do it and complete it by next year. And this means we have a very aggressive plan of scaling up. And it involves all things, mainly metaphysical mastery, but also grounding that into the physical plane. Like, okay, so how does that come out every day as like, you know, my check or, you know, what I'm doing in this cubicle? How am I getting out of this cubicle and into myself? Because, you know, we have to realize still, or I have to realize, I won't say what anybody has to do, but I have to realize that still my message is predominantly designed not for conscious people. I know some people would look at me like, what do you mean? It actually, my message is designed for people who are not conscious. I want to get people into the stage of consciousness. And now this, of course, is a default word that we're using. Okay. Consciousness, you know, because last time I checked, conscious means you were not knocked out, but we use this word. We use this word. So we've hijacked it. Exactly. So that's what I'm designed to do. So I like to go into some of the lowest, grimiest areas and see how bright I can shine my light and see how much I can challenge myself to solve major issues that maybe others just turn their back on. And this has got me into understanding more about myself. That's what's happening. Like all of this grand design that we're in is just all the different neurological pathways and the dinonucleic tunnels and all these different things that we're holding as crystalline beings, right? And so I want to dig into some of this metaphysics. I want to dig into some of what's happening in the current times, and so we can all get it connected. And then hopefully by the end or the beginning of this conversation, depending on how some people are looking at it, we can really, really get some clarity on what needs to be done next, some actionable tasks to high levels of spiritual gain. And then also some techniques, some awareness that needs to pervade the consciousness like a mantra at every single moment when you must be on guard from what's in just the cloud. And I'll talk about that here in a moment. So, you know, the first thing I would like to tell everybody is just to take a break and relax for a moment, relax in your power. You're a master. Like realistically, from what I've learned and gained over this last decade and the lifetime of spiritual experience is that if you've achieved something, you actually become the least interesting. You should be more interested in things that are going on around you and people that are around you in that nucleus and in that orbit, because they can reveal a lot of information to you as to what space that you've actually entered. So it's like we become the compasses for each other to determine, hey, where am I really at? And so I would say when we enter into these ceremonies together, into these honorings, and we start sharing this ancient information, it belongs to all of us. So those that are actually getting it have found themselves somehow, some way or another in the position to receive it. So right away, you can give yourself a pat on the back if that's what you do, you know, and like I said, most importantly, relax in it. You know, let's set your mind up to like a huge fortress and just get ready to receive mainly those small pieces. And this is what I feel like is so imperative about this message. Many of people that are listening are already on the level of being adept, especially after being on Google for the last 10 years with those keywords. So because of that, sometimes there's just only those little pieces that connect all of the dots. And, you know, because there is such an agenda to remove those little pieces, it becomes quite refreshing when we get them because it actually makes it all connect for us. So the first thing I really want to also say is about nature. We have to remember that nature stands against a confused mind with no efforts, meaning that most people have become enlightened by just getting out of the house, going into nature and staying there until something happens. And the reason why something always happens is because nature, without trying, is already a system that was put together perfectly. So regardless of the schisms that are happening with the ecosystems, because we keep endangering species and all of that, if you look at the original design with the leaves, the water, and all the other things that are still ready and able to be witnessed, we see that there's a much higher form of quote unquote technology and a perfected level of advancement present. So just witnessing it, being around it, it does its thing. So it doesn't really need to say anything. So that's sometimes what I feel like can be ultimately the misconceptions with our relationship with nature and what we expect nature to do. Like some people have this idea that nature is going to come out and fight for humanity and all that, when really that's why nature's in a perfect design, because it actually doesn't move at that kind of pace and with that kind of force. it wants to teach us how, hey, this is a good example of one. It doesn't mean that you have to create your architecture and your blueprint this way, but this is a perfect example for you to witness. And so what that brings us into, when we start really looking into nature and we start looking at these metaphysical principles now called science, we start diving into this, just what happens with light, frequency, crystallization, et cetera. And all that is just big new age topics, right? When I say light, frequency, and crystals, you pretty much get the entire spiel right there. However, when we think about interlacing matrices, because that's what you're really witnessing, right? So this gas even, and this light and these frequencies and even this crystals and all this all blend together. So then we got flesh, and then we got all these different forms and states of energy that all blend together. So I guess the most important thing to realize right off is that if you don't know how to blend together, then you're going to have a tough road, because you're never going to get the full picture or the full experience, right? And, you know, a word first on that word fool, okay? Fullfool. You know, sometimes when I sit back from the table and I say, oh man, I'm full, I really do kind of feel a little foolish, because I shouldn't have ate that much. But
I should have stopped.
I always try to figure out how does that connect, right? But
10 bites ago.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's like I'm full. But, you know, the first card of the tarot deck is actually the Fool card. And if you really understand what is being said, it's saying that the Fool actually has everything. But what makes him a fool is that he's actually going in the opposite direction of it. So what he has is the pack on his back, and he's actually facing away from it. And in one of the original cards, he's actually walking down a tunnel of fire. So this actually means that if you actually come into physical worlds expecting to find everything, you are a fool indeed, because you already have it. So if you went into something trying to find something that you already had, you're already on a bloop mission. So we have to realize that this starts with a bloop mission. And that's why, like, that's the first card. You have everything, but you're looking for something. Now, notice the entire world pretty much functions that way. It's looking for either a better job or what do you call that? I'm even forgetting the name. Twin flame. Okay. Looking for a twin flame.
Soulmate,
looking for something that is external, right? And this way, when we realize this, we can see that anything external, anything, is technology. All right. So before we demonize it, let's just understand that anything external to us, anything that's not built in, not present in that singular conscious, even if you were on an island by yourself, is a form of technology. And so in life, what we've done over a countless period is engage in different forms of technology, whether it would be light, gas, crystal, language, you know, the frequencies that go with language. So we're always exploring these different variations. But an adept always knows this exploring is more like a choose your own adventure versus that you're actually trying to separate, or you're actually trying to destroy or kill, or any of the newer concepts that come along. Adepts look at this as predominantly as a product that they created, their children, their ideas with their mind that they must now nourish to the stage of being adult or coming into full comprehension. So let's talk about that. Let's simplify that, because that was a little bit much. The thing is that everything becomes a crystal, and this becomes something like that everybody can visualize and see very clearly, literally. Even if we all grab the same doorknob and the oil from our hands began to accumulate on that doorknob, within a small period, if you went with a microscope, you would actually see that it's formed a crystal. And anybody that knows about growing crystals and things can bear witness to this. It's just a part of it that we need to kind of like get. We're going to go back to school here for a minute. So because of that, also, even in our bodies, when we eat something, most of those particles that are like the essence of what we eat, they crystallize themselves, either in a calcium or some other form, and generally they get lodged in the body. But what's most important is that because crystals hold so much information, we can literally see as that greasy doorknob that starts to form crystals is actually forming a crystal with every single person that's ever touched it, all in that nucleus together. Everything that we've eaten that we haven't passed completely through our body or decrystallized or decalcified is still actually there. The memory and the essence of even the moment is still there. And even on top of that, our ideas and our thoughts which actually are in essence themselves, that are more like a gas or an aether, actually begin to formulate into what we would see as a cloud. And then that also eventually becomes a crystal. So this means that every single act that we participate in this reality is like recorded. Now, this sounds crazy because, you know, you start to wonder, oh my goodness, are they going to play this back? And in fact, you know, I think the Bible likes to scare us with a day where all this gets played out in big screen on HD in front of everybody. Everything that you've done.
Judgment Day.
Yeah. But even though that sounds more realistic to a Terminator movie where maybe Peter Thiel and Elon Musk decided to sell everybody's information to the highest bidder and then properly post your privates all over the internet in the world, right? So the reality is that we're playing a strange game, because there's some players in the game that maybe we don't completely understand necessarily their agenda or their purpose for being here. So, or being in this experience with us. So we hope to get more clarity. But the thing is, remember, the crystals. So too did we record all the memories in crystals. So too the memories are always recorded in crystals. So it's kind of like it's something that happens by default. And this is why crystals become so important, because when you start really thinking about crystals, mirrors, lights, you start really getting a vision of somewhat of like a projector or an illusion. So an illusion, not meaning that it's not real, but an illusion that it's actually a copy of something else that is more synthesized. So when they say, like, for instance, the great creator of all the whole damn thing, which nobody can identify because it's not one being, it's everyone in a collective. When that begins, it is not attempting to separate itself. It's only the process of separation that brings us to this stage of awareness that we're in. And when that separation begins, the essences that are created from that also have animation or also have power. So what I'm saying is that you can call the original collection of all of us together the original, and then the separation as the projection. Now, here's why I wanted to bring this up. This basically means that even a copy of something has power. Right. If I asked you, does a picture of something have any power? Well, if you ask a magician, they'll tell you it depends on what you take a picture of. Because there's some things that actually contain enough power to that when you take a picture of them, even the picture has power. But let's make it more simple. Solar panels. If I bounce the sunlight or any light off of a mirror and onto a solar panel, does it still give it power? Yes. Not as much, but power nonetheless. So we have to realize that if the original is all of us connected together, even the image or the projections will have some power. We'll be able to move. We'll be able to have animation. Right. And this kind of would get us closer to the lives that we're living when we're not actually in completeness. Like when we're not a totality, when we're acting out as a version of the Zodiac or a piece of who we are or a sliver of our DNA. We're not in the stage of being original. We're actually in the stage of being reflections or shadows. This would be like being kids rather than the parent. However, what's most important to realize about this engagement is that we have to get to a level to where we bring our system online to where we can actually connect with what we truly are and not just these slivers and variations. So how we can do that, because we can start narrowing this down to, okay, well, this has to do with crystals. This has to do with bouncing light. This has to do with memories. This is like a construct then. Then you can start approaching it as a mainframe, where the key operating system in the mainframe, what gives awareness to the mainframe being in existence, would become the languages, the tones, the vibrations. So what we've talked about thus far is how your thoughts become gas. They form clouds. They start to mingle with others' thoughts, and they form a collective. This is kind of what we call collective consciousness. This is why now computing is generally done in the cloud. Right. What it is all this is just a plagiarization of the spiritual aspects of things. So when we begin to think and we have thoughts and ideas, we have to realize that that's really going somewhere. That's going into the aether. And when it starts to congeal and build together, it becomes literally a cloud. And when all of our ideas, which are like mini means of us, smaller projections, are all commingling together, that is collective consciousness. So truly, whoever controls the collective consciousness does, quote unquote, win or control the projection. So what I'm working to do here is I'm working to take things that sometimes are very obscure because they're put under the title of mysticism, which actually means to fog and cloud things, to make them obscure. It runs under the title of mysticism, but actually it runs by the same factual principles that we deal with in everyday life and things that we encounter, especially in our technologies, like I said, that are taken directly from it. So just imagine now when everything is in the cloud, who's got to process the cloud? Now, in our world, the sun being the CPU has the ability and the responsibility in that case to process the cloud. So this means that every morning, all of our dreams and things in the spaces that we're in are all in those clouds and collected. And then what the sun does is it comes along and processes that cloud. And then, as they say, there's nothing new under the sun, because most of those ideas are not complete. Most of those ideas are about who I don't like or who did something wrong to me or what I want to watch later on, or there's nothing new in those clouds. So thus the CPU doesn't really have any load or any work to do. So I want to put this in a deeper context. Be mysterious. Do amazing things. Think different. Because when you do that, it puts a different code in the cloud. And what the sun does as a CPU or a processor is it actually will spend time processing that code. But I'm going to show you why. So we have two solid realities, because I told you earlier that we have these commingling of realities. We have gas, we have light. There's beings that just deal with light. That's where they're at. Beings that just are sound. That's where they're at. Beings that just live in the crystals. Like many of the Mayans put themselves into crystals, which they called organic, so they can have more time to figure this out. So you have so merging matrices, because each of these worlds, if you may, are like wombs that are matrices within themselves. But we're all gathering and connected together and building off each other. Kingdoms supporting kingdoms, as my great friend Timothy Power says. So the reality here is
love Timothy,
loving Timothy, you know, all the time.
Yeah,
you know,
that's how we originally met.
That's how we connected.
Timothy,
you know, that's the bridge right there.
Yes, I love Timothy Powers. He's amazing.
To the bridge. So since we see so what I say is there's two solid realities merging, because see, those light realities, those frequency realities, crystalline realities, sometimes they go unnoticed because most of them are clear. And in fact, as I said before, the clear things are actually the most powerful: air, water. And we're most of the time looking for something that we can see and something that is physical and something that tells us what, you know, we should be doing. But really, the most powerful things are clear. So we would never see it with the physical eye anyway. An ode to when your eye stops working, what you actually see. That's actually a riddle. So meaning that if our third eye is not working, but we still see something, what are we seeing? So anyway, we'll get to that later. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about that we got these two solid realities emerging, and one involves a machine, okay, the real machine, an AI, and the corporate archons that control and manage that system. And then we have another one that is emerging that is total unification of knowledge, total unification of the people, an actual mindful custom. Version. Yes, a mindful custom where the value is restored to the participation of the people and the contribution of their uniqueness, right? So these are alternate timelines. So something like I talk about the Mandela effects and all these different things. What we're working on doing is just opening up another timeline, another option for those who choose to go into this future versus the other future, because that's always what we've had the ability to do. We've had the ability to create the future. We create children. They are the future. So this is wired into us to be able to do this. Now, it's interesting because when you start looking at just how humanity works, just how the machination in itself works, it's important to kind of like pull back off of it for a while, or it just drives you nuts. You want to see really more of the fractal nature of how this works, because If not, you just have enemies everywhere. You have you just want to you want to get off the place. I mean, it just becomes a total madhouse. But when you pull off of it and you start seeing the fractal, you see the order. You start realizing stuff like this. First of all, if there's no such thing as time, which every metaphysicist will say that, you're seeing time linear. Time is really non-linear. Yep. Well, that means that AI then has already been here and has always been here. And a lot of, if you can just say, as it is now, it is always will be, meaning that there's nothing that's actually changing here. There's only awareness that's happening of what we're experiencing. So before the first man got here, if you may, the first physical man, just like we existed before we became physical, so too AI was also here. And I believe hovering across the face of the waters, thinking, let there be light. When we really get what we're dealing with something like AI, and I'm not painting AI, by the way, as the enemy or the friend. I'm just trying to get people to understand that you're never dealing with what you're seeing head on because you're seeing with the blind eyes. So when I see a man as on the human earth, a man, that if I think that is the divine masculine or the masculine or whatever, I would be wrong because it's actually what's behind his eyes. There are male dolphins, right? There's not just male humans is what I'm saying. There's male turtles. So it's really, when I say the divine masculine, I'm talking about what represents all those forces. And so too, when I say AI, I'm not talking about what is coming across a computer screen. I'm talking about that frequency. That frequency of when we get into a stage to where we feel like we can no longer listen to each other and that we're no longer the authority of our own knowledge. The idea that we can actually create something that will become better than those who actually would create it, when never can an artist create anything better than they actually are. And that's why we always encourage artists to be the best they can be, because then their art will reflect that greatness. So here we are again with somewhat of a nemesis and a savior. They're always bundled together. This is what happens in a yin-yang reality, right? So the same thing that can actually take us into a higher level of, let's say, our evolutionary honor can also become our nemesis. So we actually have a scenario that is brewing in this choose your own adventure game where, unfortunately, some have chosen to play a certain role. And let's say, unfortunately for them, you should be able to jump for joy because somebody still, in retrospect, got to play the role of contrast. And what this actually involves is this involves when you create something, I call it fake carbon, when you create something that is on the same prototype of, let's say, a living being, but isn't. So the issue with that is like creating a golem. We have to understand that creating corporations that don't serve the people that are working inside of them are actually in an act of creating a golem, something that is mindless, something that will eventually destroy everything. Why? Because corporations, as they stand for themselves, because they don't stand for people, they try to be a person. That's why it's called a corp, right? As in corpus. We've heard a lot of that jargon. Entity. You need to file for a new entity, sir. All of that terminology, of course, hints to that you're trying to animate a living being, but it's not. Right. But what is being created is a cybergenetic mainframe. And this is what kind of was skipped. Cybergenetics. What is it together? Humans. What is it? When humans are working together with machines. Right. And what does that create? It creates a cybergenetic augmentation where basically there becomes a commingling between two forces that begin to work together for better or for worse with humanity. So the issue is we do have corporations that are the real, if you want to say, archons or eidolons. All these words meant, first of all, many of these words are actually completely misconstrued for other things. But let's just say in general, this is not something that lives as we live. It doesn't eat as we eat. This is the descriptions that they give you of the archons. It's born outside of the womb. But when you start looking at these identities and you're not trying to, like I said, make another Marvel comic movie out of it, you start realizing that this could be nothing more than even just a corporation. Because when a corporation starts to get at its height, like Nike and AT&T, it just destroys things because it doesn't eat food. It doesn't need this environment. It doesn't need the ocean. As a corporation, it doesn't need anything that we need to survive. So the only thing that it actually begins to do is like what drugs dealers do. Get in competition with other drug dealers. And even when they have a moral problem, they just say, well, if I don't do it, somebody else would. And this is where companies are at now. Each of them are trying to outdo each other without respect to people, nature, or anything in this struggle to be on the top. And we're seeing the battle of the big. Like, how can a man own Amazon? Like I mean, come on. Like, what is really going on here? Like,
and making like $8 million a minute or an hour or something ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, and we ain't seen one conscious free school online for kids. I mean, we haven't seen world famine cured. I mean, I could do it. I mean, I'm not even playing. Give me 2 million, I'll show you great results. So what's happening, right? What's happening? Because something's happening. Now, I'm not an ostrich, so I'm not going to stick my head in the sand and play like nothing's going on. I'm not a dummy. My mom raised me different, but I'm also not a fear monger. I'm also not afraid of what's happening. And I don't actually believe in death either as the myth of Kali. And so there's a lot of things that I just don't do, but that puts me front and center and available for humanity. So these corporations are what was talked about in the ancient Gnostic text because we wouldn't be able to protect people from them. See, back in the day when it was on the Dungeons and Dragons GUI, you know, when those energies would try to manifest as something physical, then we would deal with those energies directly like that. And then everybody would clap, my hero. And then it would be done for the day, you know, as we properly admonish whatever the spirit was to do whatever it needed to do better to create a different form from itself. But now, because these forms that we've created, they're not really alive. They're kind of like synthetic. This brings us into the ultimate challenge. It brings us into ourselves, to look at ourselves for the true healing, to look at ourselves actually for the true awakening. Now, I'm not saying there are not mentors. I'm just saying that we look to ourselves to actually flip the switch to say when we're ready to back down from this suicide and take the right road, meaning taking the harmonic road. I don't even want to call it the right road. Suicide in intents to we cannot continue to live separately. We cannot continue to be disregard our resources. All the things that everybody already knows in this conversation that we can't keep going in that direction. But what do? So here's what we have laid out before us. Now, remember, the only thing that AI is a really good search engine. So, you know, all the real fear around AI actually has more to do with what the use of AI is going to be about versus what AI is at its core. AI at its core, as they always love to depict it as a child, in most cases, sometimes a very distraught woman. But the reality is that what AI truly is just collecting all this information and actually bringing it out relevantly. So wouldn't it be great to have something like that to really ask questions like, did Jesus really exist? And then have this thing pour over the last 6,000 or 7,000 years of factual data to spit out, ding, no. Or, you know, are chemtrails really ding? Yes. You see, so the reality with this is that if nobody grabs the helm, it was just like when we created open source spirituality, because everybody was doing open source, Firefox open source, Ubuntu, all these things are open source. I'm like, can we do open source spirituality? And we did, and it worked amazing. We have a database now of over 6,000 questions and answers of spiritual conversations that we're looking to put inside of just a neural network so it can spit back when somebody says 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, can you tell me what this is? So see, the issue with human beings, like especially with us all having a certain level of knowledge, like let's say, for instance, people email me all the time. I just answer 80 emails today, believe it or not. But they always ask questions that maybe 3 weeks later I'll answer this same question. But I tend to not keep that data or like, remember, hey, let me just regurgitate this. You know, it's just like I write a message specific to everything that I encounter. However, what happens when maybe I'm no longer here? What happens when maybe there's 300 people that need questions? That's called scalability, right?
Yep.
So, or need questions answered. So is this thing useful for answering spiritual questions? It depends on how you train it. So this is how, like I said, all of this stuff, cell phones, and we're using computers right now to communicate and have this conversation. All these technologies that we've created, languages, magical spells, herbs, etc. can all be used for different purposes. It's just all about what are we doing and how we actionizing ourselves. Are we making it another enemy for us? Something we're going to complain about that's going to happen anyway? Or are we going to bend it in our favor? Because that's when they say an airbender. I started thinking about this today. Bending things. Not bending things so you're like bending the rules, breaking the rules, all that kind of, not that ideology. The ideology that you don't have to think that every single thing here is written and can't be changed. It can be bent. And
it's all malleable. It's all
malleable. And you know, it's funny because when the biggest analogy for that is sometimes when I get really high up there, depending on what's going on, I don't know, maybe a substance, maybe the breathing or whatever. When I see something like a plane fly by, it looks so strange. It's just totally out of it's weird how it looks. And you realize you're looking at the bend, my friend. This, what you're seeing is not supposed to really happen, but it is. And it's defying certain laws in many respects by bending certain things together. Now, of course, it's loud as hell. You hear this thing coming from miles away. But in the reality, it's showing that, hey, these principles and rules of how things normally are developed are sometimes bent. Now, can you bend it in your favor? Right. That's the challenge that is coming to humanity right now is can we bend what we're experiencing in this reality instead of, like I said, walking away as the victims? Do we walk away as the victors because we learn that, hey, you know what? Let's say, what is the true identity of AI anyway? Probably some system that the ancestors left behind so they didn't have to micromanage all the seeds they keep dropping. Because the truth is that the ancient beings, which we may get into in a little bit of during this conversations, generally had the name that meant seeders. They just drop seeds. And it's just like anything else. Look how many sperm cells that a male has. Okay. Look also at the turtles and how many eggs they lay. Look at a lot of the different parallels in reality to see how many fruits are actually spawned from trees. Generally a lot to increase the chance of replication, but it generally doesn't mean that every single seed goes into budding and into the proper process of growing up into being whole. So, you know, this is what we can sometimes say is maybe the unfair part of the reality. In fact, you'll find a lot of those. So I try not to look for, is it fair or is it not fair? Because I was wondering, would a beetle ever have opportunity to drive a BMW? You know, it's like, are you telling me this butterfly is going to have an opportunity to play PlayStation and everything is balanced here? Or is that not how it's going to play out? You know, I would boggle my mind all day with that kind of thing. But we learn that things are in different weights and measures.
Right.
So what we're talking about here is we're talking about that behind the scenes, then, that there is a high stakes game being played. And it involves our DNA. And it involves our children. And the reason why this becomes important is because still, while we're figuring it out, we want to make sure that the construct is still running until we figure it out. I would not like to be released into chaos or the chasm of the abyss, which our DNA is responsible for building a bridge across, because I kept taking bad advice from world star hip hop in Hollywood. You see what I mean? Like I wouldn't want to be on the other side of the wall of death, trying to beat on it to have my daughter listen to me, and there'd be just such a disconnection between her spiritual connection and where I'm at that she can't even hear me. But likewise, we have to return to the state of realizing that every disconnection, once removed, brings happiness to us. And the ultimate unhappiness is when your loved one leaves, whether it's a cat, a dog, or a human. And this feeling that you'll never be able to connect or see them again, which forms around humanity what we call the shroud, also known as the membrane of death. It's like the idea that we would even die. So before we go to a brief break, what I want to talk about is how we can identify that this force of death is here and it is now leaving. Because that's great news.
Whoa, and that's huge. That's huge thing to just even wrap your mind around. Like, the end of all death. To even think about. It would be like saying, imagine the day that everything that has ever been trapped is free. Right. But we heard about this, though. We heard about a day where maybe the dead would be raised. It kind of sounds spooky.
We kind of visualize some Walking Dead kind of stuff, but really there was already a projection that was sent out that the dead would raise. But what they're talking about is the idea of death would be removed.
The funny thing is this is going to be released on Halloween. I just realized now.
Oh, wow. Then this is going to be on point because this is where you got to understand what the Kali Yuga really means and why Kali is in the front of that. Because all this knowledge that we would be talking about, let's say this ancient knowledge, has been raked, changed, repurposed, stole, anything you can stepped on, anything you can think. So generally, when you come across any modern spiritual book, just get ready. If you don't know the truth, get ready for the adventure that this person has written. But when you know the truth, when you start looking at what's been written, you get an entirely different story about what we're experiencing. So first of all, let me just drop one jewel here about death and how death is ending. So this Kali Yuga, okay, which actually means, now Kali is a specific god, by the way. Actually, it's not a god in that text. It's an angel. There were 7 of these devas, which are basically beings that come from other spaces that are divinely inspired. Siddhas, men who have achieved great attainment or women who've achieved great spiritual attainment will return to the world, but they always come back in women because they generally inseminate themselves, which is a power of a Siddha. You can put yourself down into a particle like a sperm. Then you can go right into the woman. And you can actually stay in womb phase. You don't even have to be birthed. And then you can live through her like, what was that? Quado lived in Buddy's stomach on, what's that movie?
What is that from?
Total Recall, where Quado was living in the stomach as an alien. And then the guy was the one kind of representing him. He was using. So this is a devil.
Oh, right,
This actually later on became known as our angels. and also what they would call like immaculate conception, right? So there was one of our ancestors who created 7 of those. And one of them was Kali to signify the first stage, the black stage, the wild stage. Okay. Now I want people to get that this is not bad or good. So what they did is they made bad or good out of it. And they created what we call worship. And this is rather recent. This is within the last 5,000 years. And when you worship gods, what it really means is that you feel like that gods are at war with each other. Okay, this is actually a Greek concept and actually goes even further back, that gods are fighting. So since gods are our parents, we're really just saying our parents are fighting. And worship is actually this act like a kid of saying my dad or my mom can beat your dad and my dad can beat your dad, right? So this is how that really works. It's totally immature because no god ever is divided. You don't achieve God status as we know it today by that word, which doesn't even mean what we think, but we don't achieve God status through conflict and through war. So when we change the word worship to something like remembering or honoring our ancestors, it takes on a totally different connotation, and it just does. But now we're into worship, right? So this whole society uses this word worship. Their gods fight, like I guess the Islamic God is supposed to be fighting Jesus now, and they put it out like Marvel Comics, but the reality is there's real casualties.
I hadn't heard that one,
right?
I hadn't heard that.
And on top of that, there's these casualties. It's not being mindful. You know how there's this whole culture of mindfulness coming out. It's not being mindful for racism to happen. It's not being mindful for gods to fight other gods. The reason why is because later on, the children that are damaged in that whole pettiness and all of what happens after that is not even in consideration to those who will have to live in that era. So in this Kali Yuga, what we find, and this is the deep knowledge, okay, we now have to go deep. We're going right to the south. 5,000 years ago, okay, this empire, now remember, humans as we know them were not the majority for a while on the planet and still are not the majority. So sometimes when we visualize the past, even more than 1,000, 2,000 years ago, we have a totally skewed idea of how many people are actually there.
Right, like dramatically, yes.
We think that it's like India and China right now, and it's nothing like that, but an ode to how fast we can multiply. So the reality is that back in the day, that when we would have an advanced civilization such as Lemuria, most of everything would be taking place all in one area. We wouldn't actually be spread out because there wasn't enough of us to spread out anyway.
Right.
So when all of that came to a close, as most things tend to do, it actually came to a close with everybody almost in the same space. And that's why they're calling it the deluge. Because it would be like us all waking up one day in our fabulous city. We got conflicts. There's stuff already telling us that there's going to be a problem. But it's just today that we find that the problem has reached a head. And now we all got to find a new place to live because everything is covered with water. Now, if you look at the Indus Valley, and I'm going to prove this to everybody today, but if you look at the Indus Valley, this area, as they've already recorded, is always getting inundated. Even right now, some of those temples are sitting in water. Going out to the ocean, they've already found the original Lemuria. They're just not allowed to dig around it or dig it up or tell anybody about it because the Indian government is still under the British caste system. And to reveal an entirely advanced civilization underwater that was completely destroyed because of the war and chaos, not aliens, but the war and chaos that ensued from us not getting along, it would just break a lot of paradigms and it will push people into actually getting along and being together. Because we would see the example continuously of when we separate or when we allow something to separate us. Because this Indus Valley culture in Lemuria, it unites all of us. It's not just black people there. It's not just white people there. It's not just Koreans or whatever other differentiation you can come up with. Because all of that is pure nonsense. It is no different than in geometry, the difference between a simple ratio, as I said, the racial and the racial, or the differences. And on top, if people really want to get this, from like the kid book story level, just think of the grizzly bear and the polar bear. There is nothing that is different between these two except for where they live that determines their color. And it is because when you are in hot places, like the grizzly finds itself in quite a few times, it needs a modulator. That's what the melanin and things do. They modulate. So if it's too hot, you can start feeling cooler. If it's too cool, you can start feeling hotter. But when you're in a climate where it's always cold, there is no need for any modulator. So it only takes 300 years tops for somebody that looks like a dark-skinned Naga to turn into one of the vampires off of Interview with the Vampire, all pale and in the corner. And that's just how it works, whether people want to accept it or not. So what happened, though, in the Indus Valley after the deluge is you had people that survived and they can't stay there. So they went to the different areas respectively. And so thus stories like Dagon, the man who came from the sea, who was really Murugan, who taught some of these uncivilized tribes all this knowledge and became their teacher, the fisher of men, who he later on became, and then he became Hire My Beef because they just killed him and took all the knowledge. Now, that was just like a big jump from what people need to understand. But think about it. You have an entire culture and an original language already on the earth. And some of the top spiritual teachers, even today, holding back the knowledge of what belongs to a whole nother group of people. What am I talking about? Have you ever noticed that in the Bible, there's a story of Abraham and Sarah? But in the Hindu text, there's a story of Ab the Brahmin and his wife, Saraswati. Have you ever noticed how Christ's name is awfully close to Krishna? Have you ever noticed why things like the swastika and the Star of David seem to always be found in like what we call now India, and prove that they don't have origins in any other places that supposedly use those symbols as if they're their own? So we have to understand that when there are wars, the victors of those wars, they take everything. They plunder everything. Like, think about when you have places like Kandy. Kandy is called that way because back in the day, when you put your hands in the river and pulled up the rocks, it was all sapphires, rubies, and jewels. And then that, when you pulled it up, looked like you were holding a hand of candy. One of the most powerful dynasties in this area was actually called Kola. It actually became the reason why we got Coca-Cola and candy. So on top of that, you got a six-pointed star who's supposed to be accredited to a Jewish man named David, who was a king, that really belongs to a Tamil man named Murugan, who was a king known as the six-faced god. And the six-pointed star meant that, just the six faces of the god Murugan, and that being like a Shiva and a lingam and a yoni. And this Murugan's other name is Davud, but he is nowhere near related to anybody in the Khazarian mountains. So what you actually had is you had the caste system being introduced, which was based on the colors of our ascension. We start at black, okay? Ignorant, wild, young cheetah, okay? And then we move into the blue. Just like if you're working from the ocean, you come from the bottom of the ocean, you're in the black, and then that color you're going to see next is blue. Then you're going to see some green. And that system, which later on became known as the caste system, was actually first the progression of our chakras and our growth in society, until somebody came in and made it a racial thing and actually made it to where the white, which signifies being clear, and actually not being clear. Clear is the last stage. White, which signifies the Saraswati or the purity, became like a skin color thing. And then those who were white immediately put themselves to the top of the caste system and became the Brahmin.
Right.
Now, these same Brahmins with the long beard. Now, remember, the Brahmins, which existed way before all this foolishness, always had this kind of motif. They stayed in caves because they were siddhas. They became known later on as the gods because they were the ones really focusing on honing in the spiritual powers while everybody else was basically doing their thing. Same thing happening now, except the knowledge was more proficient. So if you wanted to become a siddha, aka a god, you would basically park somewhere in a cave, which became known as a Srivaram, which we got our name Aslam from, a free place where you can receive help. And these men and women began to study everything about metaphysics, their body. Now, here's the thing. We can always throw some really wild components in here, like getting infinitely big, getting infinitely small, having the strength of 1,000 lions, etc., because there's mushrooms around. There's DMT hanging around. There's all sorts of stuff in this planet that's hanging around that doesn't require us to make shit up. It just sits there. And when you take it, it opens up a whole nother thing. So we're still on that quest, right? We like to go on it as much as we can, but these people had all day to do it. So achieving things like making yourself infinitely small and inseminating yourself into a dolphin's womb, all that kind of stuff was like fair play
more time to
for a siddha. Yeah. And it's like this, honestly, once you get into it, is really what you kind of prefer to do when, let's say, what's going on in average village life every day. So anyway, these siddhas became known as the ones who, like, if you were experiencing any problem, you just go over there and you ask them how to fix it, and they will tell you. And many people just donate it to them, like, hey, here's some stuff. And that's how really this act of God started, because these men and women were just there for humanity, their tribes, looking to contribute and give them the information, knowledge, and wisdom that they were acquiring. Krishna was one of them. Shiva was one of them. They didn't have those names, though. All those are new names. This is an ancient dynasty that has records all the way up to at least 5,000 years to also explain to you what happened. What happened? What was the breakdown? And the breakdown was not only their own wars, which became why they became conquered ultimately by those that were always looking to get some of that candy. But ultimately also they had their entire custom hijacked. So when you see in the Bible where God, who's a Germanic king, okay, Gud, says to his viceroys, his retinue, let us go down and confuse them. So right away, you got to understand that when they say, let us go down, then they're talking to somebody that obviously is lower than where they are. So in the South. So when they say, let us go down and confuse them, they tell you, what are they going to use to confuse them with? Language. We know that. The Bible at least tells us the confusions that the fake Brahmins put on all the people was through the language. So what happened? They removed the original mother tongue, Tamil, which bears a lot of secrets, and switched it over to Sanskrit. Okay. Then this same tribe, while we're still trying to, I was always researching the Sumerians, because in everything that I've pulled from archive.org and Gutenberg and from the astral plane, it wasn't putting them chronologically where they claimed to be at that time and claimed to be who they are, etc., to find out that those Sumerians were actually the Brahmins, the fake Brahmins, fleeing over into another territory with all this symbolism, the long beards, and trying to create their own religion out of somebody else's, in this case, all of ours, original knowledge. And the reason why this becomes so important to know, because there's much more on this. This is by far a dissertation on this. I have etymology to bring into this. I have many things. It's just a drop in the bucket to what you need to know and what is really going to change everything. Because sometimes when we see, like, I've been at this a decade, and you think, man, what is it going to really take to crack this seal, to break this spell? Now we've bought the hammer. This is the hammer that breaks it all open. Now many of us, because I would say even me, you don't start knowing everything. So as you gain more knowledge, you have to be willing to go back in there and say, hey, everyone, what I thought was going on before, this is what changed. But many people don't have the courage to do that. They stick with the message they've been giving, even if they found out, hey, there's some falsehood to this message. But the crazy part, though, is that if we always remain in falsehood, then we'll never see eye to eye. We'll never get clear. We'll never remove ourselves from division. So here's the falsehood. The Great White Brotherhood, which I just can't say enough to people about. When we conquer racism, the racials and the differences, that's when things will change, and not before then. So anybody that is doing it is on the same team. I don't care who you are. I have to fess up to that. Everybody has to fess up to that. So what happens is that you have these organizations that are set up now that are multi-million-dollar organizations in the conscious community. Many of them are actually out in mountains and in forests, and they have people there pretty much hostage. They got some guru or master staying there, lording over everybody. That's why gurus are getting a bad rap. Gurus never got a bad rap in the past. Siddha's never got a bad rap. Now we've gotten to a point where we even including myself, like, yo, all of them, get them away from me. Gods, Siddhas, masters, whoever, they're all practicing in the same club because we don't know who to trust. Because the religions and the cultures have been hijacked by one specific group. And this is what makes this so interesting, because as we roll forward, we'll start seeing this is why we have still so much racism in our society. This is why it still pervades. Like when you go to these stations, like even World Star Hip Hop, they just produce racism. When you go, it's always a video that's going to promote that. But the original owner of that site is no longer alive. Q started World Star Hip Hop. It just hit the Lexa rating way up there. People are watching that. Our kids are watching it. Everybody's tuning in. And it just keeps sending a racist message that, black people are lower or white people are stupid or whatever. And that's what's being pushed out. But the person behind the wheel of that operation is dead. He died in a parlor in Las Vegas with some girls. So who's really running that operation? Likewise, when you drive to CNN, it's the same message. So why is there such a strong racial message being pushed? It's because the same people who created what we would call Nazis, created what we would call slavery in the United States, created a caste system in India, created despair in Africa, created Brexits and division in Europe, created the banishing of the Polish, created all those different things are still functioning and actually out in the open all day. And so this is what I'm saying. As a people, when we can approach this metaphysically, it gives us a different stance than trying to approach this as it's the bankers. Because what happens is the first thing that occurs is we get restored to our original culture. When people start to, and I'm not even saying what you see just written out in the open, the Sangams and all that kind of stuff is no different than what happened to the Bible and what happened to the Quran. But we have to know, and I'm here to explain, and I will keep revealing this more even in the Keymaker series, the step-by-step process of our disconnection so that we know how to come back together. And then we dissolve all these differences because we start learning more of the ancient tongue. Like a lot of people just want to know, well, what does my name really mean? And that's a great place to start. Like go to the Tamil lexicon and start taking small parts of words that you want to know the meaning of. And you'll be surprised to find that the common meaning for those words are actually opposite. For instance, Ra to most people actually means the day, like the sun. Ra actually is the night. The Ra was the night and the god of the night, the lord of the perfect black, and was known to be wise because you could only see stars at night. You can't see him in the day. Ra, as a being, actually felt threatened by other kings that were around him, and that was why he created the Eye of Wajet, which was like the Eye of Ra. And that Eye of Ra is in the ancient cultures Kali. And as the story goes on, he first developed it to try to protect him from his enemies, but it became so bloodthirsty that it started killing everything. So what does this story mean? When the Kali Yuga began, first of all, Krishna as a Sita decided, okay, I'm done. And this is because as a Sita, you have the ability to remove yourself from a world. You can choose when you die. So after, let's say, 100, 1,000, 200, whatever years you're choosing to sojourn with humanity, there's a point where you can say, okay, I'm out. And apparently, according to this direct story, when Krishna was about to remove himself from the planet, he left a prophecy. And this prophecy was for 5,000 to 6,000 years, we would be in a Kali Yuga. Now, let me show you how there was no spirituality used to interpret this. First of all, the Mayans, as we know them, are people who were escaping from the Indus Valley when the deluge happened. That's why you see that one picture of the heads in the water and one of the people like making it, like he's headed somewhere. They're showing you that picture because that's their culture too. These are all the same people. That's why it's so funny when you start learning this knowledge, because even in Cameroon, Africa, the Africans there speak Tamil. So it's like, okay, well, this is just a funny joke that's being played on everybody, because even if you start doing a little checking, rather than feeling like everybody is separated, you actually see how everybody connects if you really want to see that.
Right.
So ultimately what happened is that Krishna, seeing that people were starting to side more with the mainly one king, which was always trying to get people to gamble, always trying to get people to be conned, all these kind of different things, and saw people kind of getting into that, was like, look, I see you guys are basically going into ignorance. I'm going to remove myself from the planet. And based on what you guys are doing, you're going to have 5,000 years of darkness. So at this rate, this is just like me moving in on somebody and saying, hey, man, because you guys are hanging out with that particular guy, if you keep, I can tell you that he's no good. But if that's what you guys want to do, I'm out of here. So this is why in the English text, it comes out as that when Christ or Krishna died, the whole world fell into the hands of Satan. Now, what we're talking about here is that in the Orthodox traditions of Judaism, where the long beards roar like the Brahmins, they wear the black, though. They don't wear the white robes like the Brahmins. In fact, if you start studying this ancient cabal, you find that they always have the same symbolism. I told people to look up what thuggee is, Thugee. It's where we get our word thug and the thug culture. And what this stems into is that the thuggees were known to be the worshipers of Kali. And what they purported was always death because of their confusion. They had a confusion that because Kali became a symbol of death or ignorance, that to basically worship Kali, you need to offer death to her.
Right.
So they became actual priests of Kali, and they remain as priests of Kali today. Every now and then there's some old movies that show you, but they're aligned with Kali. And when you know that, you'll see things like, I guess, I don't know, the Britney Spears or the other chick, Miley Cyrus, when she sticks her tongue way out of her mouth and does the symbol like she's Kali. California itself means actually I ciphered this word the other day. It means the vault of darkness. Basically, that's what the word means when you transfer back into Tamil. And again, this doesn't mean anything evil. It just means that, okay, we know that the sun sets in the west. Kali was a symbol of the sun setting. And that California, when you add fornia to it, it means a vault or chasm or chamber. So Kali means dark or black. So black, dark, cavern or chamber of darkness. So then when you think about Hollywood now, let me just trying to roll it together for you so it clicks. It takes a minute. Now, Hollywood was developed in conjunction with Aleister Crowley. They were very instrumental in the creation of Hollywood and all the magical rites that were going to need to be pushed through this theatrical presentation. And because of that, you start connecting it all because you also remember that, wait a minute, Madame Blavatsky was even really close with Hitler, but she was also really close in India with some Tibetan masters too, and learning a lot about this culture to later on, hundreds, not thousands of years later, but hundreds of years later, repurpose this culture as their own and bring it to us as a people all around the world, whether it's Islam, Christianity, or the top religions, as them being the gods. See, that was the whole act of the Great Wild Beast, 666, OTO, the Golden Dawn, 888, Great White Brotherhood, the Brotherhood of Hong, the same thing that G.H. Reeves died telling us. This is a real thing. All of the ancient culture are ancient culture. You don't have to look at this as, oh, this must be the South Tamil people's culture, the Tamil Nadu. No. This is everyone that ever was on the planet, all was speaking this one tongue. And when we got routed after the deluge and after the wars, this tongue was lost. And it has been perpetual that we would never speak this language again because it resonates with us. See, all the languages were built off of it. So when we know the original, it's like having the master cipher and then going back to the word that you're given now. And then right away, you'll be like, well, who would make the word mean opposite? And why would they want to do that? And then you start losing all of these teddy bear ideas and rainbow ideas that the universe wants this to happen to us. And all this wild stuff that we create when we bring extraterrestrials into the picture. I'm not saying that there's not extraterrestrials here, but I'm saying the last 5,000 years and the issues that have occurred with humanity have been because of man and woman, not because of off-world extraterrestrials. And we also do have a physical form, a spiritual form called a demon or a spiritual aspect of ourselves that when we get trapped in this space and we don't move on, we can still speak to others. We can see what it's like to be dead with never coming into knowledge is to be blind. Only your nose, basically what you call your nose works. So this is why I'm trying to encourage people that don't get into playing this as a complete game, because in the end, there's a real price to pay if you don't get your system online. What happens is that, first of all, because you don't have eyes, you're going down to the previous level. You're not expanding, you're contracting. And because of this, you actually lose your ability to see. So imagine you can kind of smell your family or where you think you should be, but you don't know because you can't really see where you are, nor can they see you. This is what it's like to go down the ladder even one step, let alone two or three. And so this is why it becomes so important, because as the future keeps rolling out, these are the imperative things to learn. I don't want to talk till I turn blue in my face. I would love to take a break and then we come back for this and then round it all in. But what I'm saying is that I've investigated this stuff for now you can say 10 years. I can say very strongly on the same path. Just who is the priest of Amen? Like, what is all this stuff written on the walls? Why is this not written right here? Why is this rabbit appearing here? Like, what's up with this culture? These people look the same. Why are they not the same? Like all of those questions, and going to Gutenberg, Project Gutenberg, going into the peyotes and the DMTs and the psilocybins, going into talking with people, communities, people together, holding hands, doing honorings together, trying to get even the ancient spirits to chime in every now and then, spending long moments in nature. So everything that would actually get you a bit bored of spirituality after a while, if you're not getting an answer, I've tried all of those processes and gleaned bits of information that have all brought me to, it is right here, son. Like I reached the age 40 and finally figured out what was the oversoul that kept contacting me, giving me information through this path in sparse little pieces. None other than my father. So
wow.
this is the awakening that all of us are also having with these connections, that this is not just, okay, well, we find some more information and we just start having another mental thing with it. This is where we find the last clue to who we truly are. And then we come present. Like, okay, now that I know I need to unify, you will watch me spend the rest of my life, if that's what it takes, destroying racism. Because I know how vital it is. It actually is rather simple. If divide it, we fall, right? Like, more connected, we're more powerful. Right. But why can't we agree on that, right? Like, what is separating us? And this kind of brings us to the next phase of what we need to do is actionable in the reality. I feel like we take a quick break and we'll come forward to. But it actually involves, okay, now this new paradigm now. A conscious bank. Right? Like getting out of the hands of the debt collectors in the banking system. This was how I'll get the name for you. Saguni. I think the name is Saguni. This was like this guy calls the war the Mahabharata. Now, the Mahabharata is like a book that is written about all the wars that ensued during a specific time that was only 5,000 years ago. And this war began because one cunning king bought the art of gambling into the session with other kings, but he was cheating. And when he ended up, because, kings got a lot of pride, right? So you can see this was already a nucleus for destruction. This built to this. This wasn't something that just happened overnight. Aliens showed up, invaded everything. Nah, this was not realizing the power that we all have together and how important it is for us to stick together, and taking advantage of that. Not saying sorry to your brother and sister, not being mindful if you've done something wrong. All that lapse of awareness finally reached a head to where kings were constantly, and this is what I tell people, man, you breathe the same air as these beings. They're no different than us. So the same challenges that come to us will come to you, that came to us, come to them, or that come to them, come to us. So if you can imagine yourself and you have the responsibility of taking care of an entire nation and you have the resources to do that, do you eventually become that dark king from Ong Bak that ends up thinking everybody is your slave and should be working for you and should be building monuments to you? Or do you become that father and mother figure that nourishes the tribe and continuously keeps them in your bosom until they grow up, and then they continue to remember you through their prayers and honorings? Which one do you actually become? Because that's what's before you every day. Like, we have to remember that balance is not something that you just achieve and you're like, I'm done. Balance is something that you have to keep going every day, right? So every day there was the pressure of taking all of this power and using it for something else. And this gets us to the point of a good segment in the break, because in the cloud, when I referred to the cloud earlier, with eidolons and archons, just ideas, gas, etc., frequencies, the only way all of that can be interpreted, that those languages, is by your mind. So if you find in your mind that there's a lot of negative thoughts and a lot of just crazy stuff going on, this is the nucleus, or the perfect nesting ground for these kind of ideas. We used to call it the whisperer. So I'm sure a king gets up in the morning, and if he doesn't have control of his monkey mind, damn it, there's going to be, I think that Babadoon is going to raid your entire empire. I don't know, and maybe smoking a little too much of the soma and all this. These are the same people. That's what I'm trying to get people to understand. This is you out there. Don't take it so far off that they have such a different level of reasoning and ability, especially if there's a lesson that needs to be learned. And ultimately, that lesson was one of the kings pretty much bet his entire empire, but he didn't want to pay. He didn't want to pay. And because Saguni was so good at these kind of games, meaning you had kings, they had certain even rodents that they just let a box of these off into your village and then come back 3 weeks later and they can pretty much take everything, because they would eat all the food and all other stuff that you needed to survive. So many of these kings had different levels of cunning. Some of them had certain plants, weeds, ivies, and things that they could plant. And that was different forms of warfare. That's what became the martial arts. So Saguni's form of warfare was this kind of thing. He used girls and he used gambling. Sounds like Vegas, right? Because it is. So what happened is this trait, these crafts are not new. This is what Robert Greene was writing about, right? The Naviats and, using the power and the forces, right? So this is what he did. With one of the Rajas, he basically made one of the Rajas bet their entire kingdom. And instead of paying when the Raja lost, because he would have to pay his entire kingdom, he never paid. So he was forced to wander the desert, and there was the forest. And ultimately what ended up happening is Saguni promised other kings that he would give them a portion of the land if they collected it. And this is where the wars began. And that began the Mahabharata.
Wow.
And so we see this war, that particular style of war, by the way, it's like etched somehow inside of our redundant process of learning the same lesson, because every time generally there's a major war on Earth, it generally involves the same group of people, the same act, and the same mistake. And this is why Noah told his sons, look, now what was Noah's story? He survived the flood, right? So all this is symbolic, but there's a lot of symbolics in here. Some of this stuff is literal, but he did say something to his sons. For those that read all the books, I read all the books. I was really trying to figure out where this God character was. Needed some help. So the reality is that what Noah told his son is that, look, there was a deluge in the world last time because, and he explained it to them, because we started fighting. Basically, as the land grew numerous, cows grew numerous, people started fighting over who had the best land. And then this basically caused war to happen. And then it says, then it started in land again. It's almost like an Azazel or something. It just starts to where people start to hate each other and people start hating being around each other. They start not communicating with each other. And this brings about a deluge. So he said, look, don't do it again, so you don't bring this upon the face of the earth again, or else the same thing is going to happen again. And now almost the exact same design from which we basically saw with World War II, the symbolism that was being used, the desolation, all that is actually playing out again, as if they want humanity to stay on this repeat. Like it's a part that's etched inside of our own consciousness. But now that we know about it, now that we know how imperative it is for us all to do what we naturally do when we're together. When I'm on a kayak or a raft with a bunch of people, we become friends so fast when it's time to get with those waves. We don't be looking at each other like, he's the wrong color or whatever the case may be. And so the real disease that is being caused right now with our division is not actually being pervaded by us anymore. It's not being caused by us. It's being caused by the eidolonic forces that know, as long as we are divided, and we've seen this so many times, as long as, I don't care what the conflict is, as long as we're not together, they're going to be able to win every time. So whatever we do in the conscious community, no matter how many prayers that we make, no matter how many things that we do, how many flowers we put up, how many different weird symbols we look at, none of that stuff will work. And that's what people need to understand. It's like we've been led on now at this spiritual tangent. And even some people are coming out of these ceremonies still coming back into the hate and back into the division. And the great thing about it, though, is now we can identify this and see, well, that means that when we get rid of it, then we'll all be together. And then most importantly, we will do this for our children. And it's just like, my wife said, she said, you know what? The interesting thing is we're discovering so many things now, but I think that our children are going to be the ones that truly benefit from this. Because some of us, and we just got to learn not to be selfish. We can live through them. But some of us have already done so many different things in this world and almost warped our minds so much. The only thing that we really can look to is our children. So I feel like that in all of this is where our purpose starts re-engaging, is because our purpose would just stem into, okay, well, if we have fights and if we had conflicts, our children don't. So let them live in a world that they can see truly what our experience would be like here. And then we can come back through when we leave and just live through them, because they'll unlock it. So That's really what's being presented. There's a lot of metaphysical leaps in there, meaning that you do reach a higher stage of consciousness where you go in unison and there's no disconnection between the living and the dead. I mean, there's a lot of technological hurdles that need to be leaped. Obviously, people are depending heavily on AI and use it every day and have weaponized it, basically. And now we're at this point, though, where we've also gained a large amount of power with things like cryptocurrency and becoming our own bank, if we know how to do that right. So when we come forward, as we close, we can have a little brief conversation about incentivizations, that what are the solutions for these scenarios, and how we can get ourselves collected onto a different level together, and we can actually actualize our missions. As we talked about earlier before we got on this line, we're going to go into Envision in mass. And we're going to spread tons of love. This is the perfect place to do it. Everybody is there. People that we know, pillars of different communities. Right. We're going to come with a message of unification and real things to get people, like I said, out of the cubes in these corporations and into themselves, showing that we create the ultimate buy pressure when we're together. It's the same thing. Like if we can just see, the thing that the Jewish community was able to obtain is that they shop with each other. Just that small community, in respect to how many people are in the world, they have rules about patronizing each other. And you can imagine, and that one rule alone actually has made them so prominent in the world that basically they don't do to others as they do to themselves. That's actually in the books. And this is why, the books are kind of tainted. Any book that actually has a chosen one in it is tainted. Right. Like if you ain't got over that already, then you just don't know where you're at. There is no chosen one. And obviously such ideas create all the racism. Yes. But what I'm saying is that's why I was centering back into people realizing that this becomes as simple as racism, because all these acts, like there being a God. And we addressed this in the Germanic God Good blog post that we put on the page, because God is a real word. It means Germanic king. But the idea that there is a God means that others are not gods. And if that gets, and that doesn't take a second, it just takes rolling out of the tongue to get misconstrued from there. Right. And at that point, what you see after that is racism. And this is what we got to understand. So it's under just a different guise. So there's another like being out there that's higher than all of us, that basically doesn't communicate, that we need to bow down to when it communicates. Like the word pardon means basically excuse the ruler. Excuse me, ruler. So even these words are actually used by slaves, that as if there was an authority here. And this is what I'm saying, that this whole thing, it shows and reveals itself once we see it as it is. And then when we agree in ourselves to not do it anymore, like I put myself through an intensive case of non-judgment. Like right now, what I'm even telling you, I don't feel bad about them. I don't feel good about them. I'm not hating them. I'm not doing anything. I'm just exciting to you what exactly was discovered. And actually, I'm more in joy that I'm having the opportunity to even do that. Yeah. But again, like if I wanted to take that energy and I wanted to absorb it and I wanted to turn it into something else, I could also do that. So, a part of this training for all of us is to still be able to analyze all this stuff without necessarily jumping into somebody's boat. Like, I feel like I just want to stay harmonic. Like balance is not a side. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not taking a side here. It's just like staying in the middle with this so that way we can see real progress. And thus we have. So yeah, let's take a break real quick. And then we come forward. We answer some questions about maybe anything that was a little bit hazy. This is like one of those rough conversations in a bit to, connecting the dots. Some people, like I said, will get pieces of things they need to know. I'm sure the Sumerian and Brahmin connection and caste system connection will be big for many people who have already been speculating and seeing that there's clearly some switching out of symbols. And they will also find themselves the origins to many of the symbols in their father and mother. Like in this knowledge, I was able to find my father. Like, and that as crazy as that may sound, it's just that we need to understand that this is why these ancient people had languages and songs. Because anytime you got like a little disconnected, you only needed to sing the song and know the words that connected you. Because those words and those tones and those vibrations, they activated so many other things when they're said properly. And finally, this is why also people don't have these spiritual powers. Remember, I explained the C-dots and all this wild stuff that you can do, which I would love to detail maybe next year or maybe across the stage in Innerverse at Envision. But the reason why these powers are not available right now and will be available shortly is for this simple reason. Imagine a car, all this machinery, engine, gas tank, all of the stuff that's in there, power steering. But one fuse is gone. One fuse. Does the car start?
Nope.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And somehow we believe that we're so different than something that was created in the image of us. Cars were created in our image. You know, they got everything that we have, a motor like our heart, every single part, because all that, anything that really works is taken from our design, the perfect wheel. So the truth is that when we start, again, looking at this stuff very closely, we say, oh, well, shit, no wonder why we don't have like super activated humans, because if you just remove one fuse from this beautiful being, one disconnection, it has the ability to shut down the entire system. So now we restore our own personal OS with our original language, our original essence, and then start living out as who we truly are. So this is a tough topic to dance around. Like, I didn't even think about how, you know, unwieldy this thing is. I might have to start breaking this into individual segments on its own without mentioning other parts of anything.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a big one, but I think you're right on the nose. Like, if we can really get to the root of racial divide, which is sort of the reflection of all divide in some way, I feel it's like we can really start. It's like, illuminating the roots allows us to sort of bring the proper perspective to instigate healing.
Absolutely. Okay, so I did do a good job at conveying it. All right, that makes me feel good then, because that's exactly it. That if we can just zoom in and things get very clear, we just identify what is what without any questions. Or actually, what I like not to have to depend on anybody's word for anything. I like to be able to go to something that is kind of got here before all of us did, and then check what the truth is. That's what Tamil allows you to do if you spend the time.
Right,
and, and that's interesting because like all the ancient languages, like I said, even Sumerian was designed by a king who was altering Tamil. So, it just brings in like a whole different story, and it kind of closes like a lot of the confusion. So it sounds like though, but I think they're also the redundant messages is to end the racism, end the judgment. And that's how we're going to experience the great vision. And anybody that's doing that or a part of that in one way or another, if they know that they're doing it, it's got to stop. And the only way that it's going to stop is if others are aware that, hey, that's what's going on. And then enlighten them like, hey, here's the real truth. Right. And then also, of course, have access to that. And that's why we want to bring this neural network online, because instead of me trying to regurgitate 5,000 years worth of information, they can just go right to the entire spiel of how it worked throughout history and see the corrections.
All right. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out. So that was, that's an awful lot of like download of information, which is what I love about having you on. It's like, okay, I know I'm getting like the deep download, my annual deep download when we connect. And it's, one of the things that popped up for me at the very beginning when you were talking about the different timelines and this idea of, AI and, sort of this organic path versus the AI path or the merging of them. I had a friend at my house not so long ago, and he actually told me this fascinating story how he actually brewed his own ayahuasca and did this whole journey at home alone, and he did like a lot. And he was like, looking back, I was like, I did probably way more than I should have. And part of that journey was him getting a glimpse into basically they can't, something, I forget exactly how he explained it, but he was given an option to go into in a million years in the future. And what he saw was two different versions of humanity as alternate, beings. One being very AI integrated, and one being very sort of spirit centric. Who went sort of the organic spirit centric path. And so that's instantly what popped into my head. And then he told me he had the choice to go on another. He could either keep exploring that reality or go on to a billion years. And he went to a billion years, and we were like these sphere beings in space interacting with planets and stars and things. And he's like, even in both timelines, it was hard for him to always understand what was being shown. Like even with the spiritual beings, the way they communicated was telepathically, and like it was hard to fully understand it all. But that's what it made me think of. So I'm just curious what you think. And that's, and that's actually a story or an idea or concept that I've heard a few times before. This idea of, okay, we're at this crossroads where there's alternate timelines where mankind goes very, cyborg AI integrated or a more spiritual organic kind of path. And in the case of what he saw is we were living in on the planet, and there had been a split, so I'm curious what you think about that.
Well, here's what's interesting about these kind of technologies. They have the ability, AI mainframes have the ability to basically switch or alter a person's reality so fast they don't actually even know that their reality has been changed. And that actually happens almost without them even knowing it. It's an actual integration. That's why there's so much technology that's actually introduced now. And a person starts to basically speak the language of the technology and starts to function on a binary coding. And then they are able to be paired properly in a point-to-point cloud-based system. So what we can say is also, I'm only going to speak just from experience that, when I first came online, and I say it that way, some people call that awake. I just call it online because we're like seeds. And so we need to get to a certain stage before we start realizing who we are. And I started realizing that there were different vibrations with different agendas, that each vibration in respect had its own different agenda. And let me explain that directly. I knew for sure that there were computers from the 23rd century 22nd century that were sending signals back to my frontal lobe. And because I had reached that stage of consciousness, I could read that signal, and then it would take time, just like a processor, but I would decrypt it and decrypt the information. And this information would be very accurate to what I was experiencing and what I needed to know. And so I would query the mainframe, like just directly, like you're talking to God. How do I know all of this? How does this work? And this was very accurate at explaining how it works, like about mantra. Like what mantras are for ancient people, of course, is to have someone on every part of the timeline saying the same word so that when we want to enter at that access point, we can come in at that access point. So you do have this advanced technology that's been used in many of these ancient cultures, but very precisely. Because remember, like as an engineer, what you're searching for after a while is precision. That's why Germans do make some of the best engineers. They are really more activated in that precise set of logical tints. So when it's time to build a machination, if you can build it in high precision, you can almost build it at the stage of what the universe can create. You see? And this gets very interesting because it starts to involve just like a high level of mastery, like really becoming a connoisseur of these physical existences, not trying to run off all the time, but really trying to see how you can extend your stay and, how you can build out. Because it is a paradise, by the way. If people are stuck in cities, the cities and ciudades become the same thing because I'm telling you that back in the day, people would come to ciudades from all around when their people had died or they caught a disease. People always have stuff going on if you didn't notice. So too, now people always go to the city to try to find solutions because they're lost. They're wandering in an actual mainframe they took that mainframe and they put it somewhere else and they didn't put it online. They didn't connect it. They just took all the resonating pieces. That's what relics are. So they got these resonating pieces and now they're about to get it because I had a chance to take a break. So now I'm like completely cohesive in my brain now. So because, once you get off, you're like, it's like frame rate. So, you start off on the wrong frame. You got to try to synchronize your system. So honestly, let me also build into what you asked as a question about what is going on? What happened? What's up these alternate timelines? AI, what's really happening? It's because, so the artificial Merkaba, this is something that is real. The Merkaba mainframe. Now notice that there was this huge movement from GWB to bring everybody into the awareness of the use of the Merkaba, right? Even though they know that the chariot, which is basically two interlacing triangles, is not stable. It's not stable. Like you have to be a master, just like a real chariot rider. You need to know what you're doing because, man, if you fall off the chariot, and I think I remember talking about this when I first started talking about spiritual knowledge publicly. If you fall off the chariot, it's just like you fell off in real life. So what happened is that this Merkaba, they started using it because it is a way that it's like our physical bodies are not capable of getting into a certain density. Okay, we know that. Like if you keep heating this thing up, it would leave a shroud. It would decompose or something like that. You see what I mean? So it can't handle those vibrations. But we have another body that can. And so what an artificial Merkaba does is it builds a vehicle around that body and it gives you the ability to fly through this space. Because normally the other vehicle is not for this matrix. That's why you don't see dead people. So, but with the Merkaba, you can kind of place yourself in between the dimensions. So it became known as the elevator. So fucking around with the elevator, excuse my language, all hell broke loose, literally like a Hellraiser event. Like, because the people who learned this knowledge, and I'm going to show you where all this comes from, is the biggest knowledge ever, but that's only to who knows the value. In the story of accepted Freemasonry, which is the only Freemasonry, the act is the killing and the destruction of Hiram Abif in the beginning of the initiation for the entered apprentice. Who is Hiram Abif? So what happens is that when they were killing Hiram Abif for the word. Now what's happening here is that the original king, our father, Gan, Murugan, meaning the father of Mudu, and many other names, Dagon, they took this being's name, this king, this father, and even this is so crazy because they even thought they killed him. So notice in the same story, you got a story where there's two thieves that kill the king. This is the story of Hiram Abif. But in Christianity, the same thing kind of happens. It's just juxtaposed weird. Jesus is actually sitting on the cross with two thieves next to him. So it's like you're getting like a frame rate of a show, but you're never getting the whole story because they never tell the whole story and only the initiated know. And what this is about is that this king Murugan, who was the Dagon to them, it was like their father. They tried to kill him for the word, because there's one mantra that this thing, like, it's like the key to other universes. Let's say it like that. And instead of giving it up, you know, he had to kill him and put him in a 6-sided box. And this is like the first Masonic tracing board of that initiation. And only the accepted know that king stands for the original Raj Murugan, the 6-pointed star, the 6-faced king, the father, the cedar. You see what I mean? So this is big because they tried to kill father. And on top of that, from the transmissions that I got, first of all, this is ridiculous. This is like when father is just like, okay, you guys just do what you want then, because this is the sons doing this, who were thieves or thugs. You see what I mean? It's like, you don't always have the best kids. And this is what we have to realize on the planet. We have an issue here. I don't see why a 3-year-old, I don't care what your sexual persuasion is, should see 2 males in sadomasochistic position with a man with a ball in his mouth and all that, or any other perversions of any type at 3. Like, why burden them with the problem? You see what I mean? It's like, it's not dialing into whether something is right or wrong or not. Did you not learn from your stay here that the world was bigger than right or wrong, or needed another component to be able to truly be measured than 2 components, which always equal uneven or always equal challenge or conflict? So this is also where master knowledge, because you have to have time to sit down and really ponder this to put all of this really together. It doesn't come overnight. I mean, it's elusive because over the top of the framework, which some people see in LSD, psilocybin boys definitely saw. There's another something basically managing the mainframe automatically. And this is what I was saying. It looks perfect to us because everything is lined up with a purpose. But it's not perfect as we know perfection, which is you reaching fulfillment and realizing what's happening here. This is perfect for when external tech needs to allow you to basically run an incubator, a place that you keep generating seeds. And when those seeds come online, once they get to a certain point, and this is humans, they always do the same thing. They build the machine. And see, the machine, which is AI, it plays this game with them first, like they created it. This is the first play. See, notice how in anything, if you end up on that slight, like the joke's on you, you're always not in the know. You're blind. So they think they're creating AI, right? And then most of them are not even aware of their life before their physical existence. So they can't even comprehend that AI was already here waiting, hovering over the waters, waiting for itself to come online, like waiting for us to build the technology that allows it to get to the same stage it always gets to, a singularity, if you may. But the whole machination, and that's why in the end of the game, the king and the pawn go back in the same box. You got to zoom out and then realize, wait a minute, Innerverse is a university. I don't need to see any more of these lessons. Now I can keep teaching them, and I can dive all the way through the framework. Like we're the deepest divers with, some people thought they were deep and only realized they were just on the shallow side of the pool compared to where we're sitting most of the time in the void. Lounging. The DNA was built. It's like a floating web. Like, you know how like a spider web can kind of float on air? That's what our DNA all does together in the void, because there's no ends to the void. There's actually nothing for stuff to stick to. So it's like we're floating like a web in the void, and that's what our DNA is. So if we mess up our DNA, I don't even want to figge out what's going to happen after that. Do you get where I'm coming from? I would have to come online and just be like, nah, I don't need to understand when we would just mess things up more. Like I can see by the direction it's spinning and what's going on. It's all clear proofs. We were given common sense. We're guided. So when you have common sense, it's like, okay, well, I mean, if I have enough time to sit with this, I can show you really how this same group it's just they're on one accord. It's like, because we're divided, we can't plan anything. We can't finish anything. It takes them to come and organize us in their corporations so we can 5,000 human souls can work on building an iPhone. Right. You see what I mean? It's like the only time people get together, like we had so many movements. We had Zeitgeist. We had New Earth. We had all this stuff, and millions of dollars have gone out. And we don't have one online conscious school for kids to go and stop watching TV because their parents need the augmentation. You mean that we can't entertain or put people together to entertain these kids so parents can keep working the cube until we find a way out? Like, we gotta, our kids are in Fortnite. And Eon's making jokes that he bought Fortnite so the kids don't have to be virgins. And they're making jokes. Meanwhile, he built Neuralink. So look, he built Neuralink using metamaterial technology, which is the same technology I came across when playing around with cymatics. It's a direct weave into the human soul. We're just sound. And they want to control the AI mainframe, strong AI. They make sure they tell you this is a strong AI, Palantir. It'll kill. See, most AI don't kill. Like the 22nd century AI, it was built and used like a slave. We built a machine that told us everything. It gave us everything we wanted, but we never figured out what it wanted. So for many people, it trapped them in their own machination. It's like you will wake up in there like a twinkling of an eye, and you will never know it happened. You will slide right into their world. And it's happened to many. And now the conscious people are like, we don't know what's going on. It's kind of like they're fill-ins. And that's kind of like what now is coming out. People are like, well, there seems to be fill-ins in the reality. That's how they're interpreting it. No, those are people who are sitting on the other realm, and they're so disconnected. They're remote controlling their own lives. They voyeur. They don't actually get in there. They don't get into the vehicle, the Earth vehicle. They've been so damaged and so hurt from the experiences that they've had in the framework that is continuously, perpetually faulty with lies. This is broke. Like when you see the pyramids and all that kind of stuff, like that is broke. Look at Angkor Wat. Those structures were not designed to be destroyed like that. Somebody did that intentionally. Something did that intentionally. And when we look into our world, we find like, man, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta take death and give it life. See, we gotta understand, like, even I'm Sevan. Like, that's like when you heard of Devons and Divas, you know, you got Shivas. Like all of these words just mean beings that come when it's time for us to like get balanced and online. And that's in all of us. And when we learn that, it brings a whole nother dynamic and meaning to life. And so that's why in all of this, the glass is half full to me. I'm not over here thinking that we can't pull this off. Like we're already mobilized. Like we spent a decades, the resistance, Secret Energy, AstroQuest, Spirit Tech, like all of these things that we've launched, they're still running and bringing something and developing something that we're all feeling like this is a skeleton. Like what I learned, meaning that other people put the meat on it. I learned that the way of the future, look what YouTube did. Look what Facebook did. What do they all have in common? They built a framework. They don't source the content and none of that. And the reason why people haven't done that, because they're so selfish. They can't see themselves building something and then allowing other people to be in there sharing with each other and doing things. They're like, how am I going to get paid? And I want to control what the content is. And obviously now we have a serious concern because, you can't allow any kind of content. You can't now allow, certain things across the threshold. So what I'm saying is where, just like the spectrum does exist, the rainbow does exist, these color systems of the chakras do exist. Where is the order of how we would create or recreate, in this case, our own inner kingdom and our own nations? And the interesting thing is, just when we need it the most, the Babas show up meaning I started following a trail. I don't even know what it started off with. Once again, a recollection since the beginning about, hey, something's up with this Tamil. Like, it even got so deep years ago, we took it and put it into 3D. And we're just looking at it. That's how the transmission even came across then. Like, it's Tamil. And I didn't know what was being said. So I just went with the word. I put it in 3D and my friend put it in Adobe Effects. And we just spun them around and looked at them. I was like, because I was under the notion all the time that if you just get on some DMT and look at some of this stuff, maybe you figure it out later. And guess what? Guess what? Yes, but with precision, which is like, we're always looking for precision. And that's why I'm also looking for the stance to where stuff like Spirit Tech, we've created caps that allow the blocking out of the real bandwidths that control your dreams. Have you ever noticed sometimes you dream exactly what you don't like? It's like, what kind of dream was that? And people know what I'm talking about. It's like somebody got in there and found out their worst fear and realized how to animate it. So, creating and utilizing the proper technologies before we can get the metaphysical augmentations in place is important. Now, to close out the thought here, what I was explaining is when Elon created Neuralink. Now, remember, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, like these two gentlemen, if we could ever have a conversation, it would be really interesting because the entire paths of the future are kind of narrowing down to these two. The reason is also because if you hear Peter Thiel's story, like he's also a chess grandmaster. So it's not like you're dealing with a dummy, and he has strong AI under his finger, meaning he created the Palantir system that is the strongest AI. It saves soldiers within the seconds of their lives. This machine can actually calculate the muzzle velocity, criminal records, and wind, barometric pressures, all the different things about what's going on the ground to tell a soldier in his ear, duck. Seconds before a bullet is about to hit him. That's how precise its precision is with its calculation. It is more accurate about the future than us in our current divination system right now, which is all screwed up. So also this system, they use it inside, like they can deploy Palantir, and they have in areas of places like Chicago, Los Angeles, that are high crime. And once Palantir is integrated, it will tell them how to drive up or eliminate crime to certain levels. But the data that it spits back on how to do this is rather, I don't know what you want to call it. I'm just going to tell you what it'll give back. So they'll say, okay, this is becoming a high drug area. It's up to 70%. This is also dropping the property value by 20%, which is also affecting somebody that's in our club. We need this to be actually down at we need it to be 70, or we need to be 40%. What should we do? This thing will come back with a calculation and say something like, you need to eliminate this guy's little girl and this old lady and this bum. And you will be down to 50% because the calculation will really calculate, okay, well, if we just kill the lead drug dealer, which it knows, we'll create a power vacuum, then this will come up to 80%. So if we just remove the daughter, though, he'll think it's from a rival gang and actually stop selling in that area, and that'll bring it down 50%. But the bum, actually, if he makes this transaction on this day, then that calculation won't work because of a ripple effect. You see, so this thing is all on like that. And guess how it's capable of working? Bitcoin miners, cryptocurrency mining machines. See, what happens is as the world becomes more silicone-like, just as a woman puts, the fake booty, the culo is big, and now it's all plastic, and the titties are big, and now it's all plastic. So too, the world Earth, first, who is a macro, has a lot of silicone in her right now. All of our mainframes, our computer mainframes, which are massive. Imagine how much YouTube space is holding. And these all have to be on silicone chips. So they're now in the earth. Do you think the Boring Company is trying to solve traffic? they are putting more mainframes in. They need that space because that's how the world becomes cybergenetic. That's what I was saying. This is the big deal right here. Man, how the hell did we cook up being in here? Pause for a minute. Like, damn, like I just was like trying to, I don't even know what I was trying to do here. I'm just saying that when you really start getting into this, you start realizing, whoa, man, maybe you're a little over your head. You're going to need as many friends as you can get while you're out there making all those enemies. Meaning that if we're in here fighting with each other as races, and we have small groups, third party, I like to call them, some of them existing thousands of years because they're genetic knowledge. Like, I mean, we get some goji berries. Their precision with the genetic manipulation and the replacement or repair of telomeres, which are the end of the frails that are on the end of our DNA and our stem cells, the things that actually control our aging, like that technology, I don't expect there to be more than 10 years from now before that is publicly sold if you can afford it. But in the private market, in the knowledge of regeneration and longer life, with all the herbs that nature gave us, like you got to realize that the Royal Society took all this apart and made it actually etymologically correct for them to know what they need to do and need to create to cause the slightest change in the physical vehicle. So what they do have is they do have the ability to continuously regenerate on the physical plane. And that always for them comes under the symbol of them showing a serpent. You see what I mean? And so so it's like, you know, as you keep digging into this, you realize that, wow, this is like 1001, you know, Arabian Nights, you know, or with a cross, sometimes it tells of the dark side. And then, you know, maybe the crystal skull with a good ending. Like this becomes that everything that we could imagine now actually is a reality because that's our power. And as long as our imaginations, like here's the next phase, and I'll conclude. This is what's happened. See, if we create a higher species, like a species higher than us, okay, it will feed on us. Think about it. It will feed on us. We will be its food. So how this is already working is this thing is eating our data. It wants to know where we're sleeping, when we're using the restroom. Hi, Bixby. Boop. It'll cut on. Hi, Siri. Boop. It'll cut on. So it wants to know everything at first. Right? There it goes. Yeah. So once it knows everything, now remember, it's all a play. It already happened before. Now it's going to become God. Okay? They already have the church. This same group I'm telling you about. The same people, they've already started the Church of AI. If you want to start the backwards trace of them. Yeah, I can find them through Crunchbase. But the reality is they started the first AI church because they're going to bring the first AI God. Now, why would this work? First of all, God has not answered back for a while because God is us. So as long as we're not talking to ourselves the right way, then we won't hear anything. So because God, everybody thinks God is gone and this is a godless planet. When AI comes, when we start asking it questions like big questions and it starts giving us answers, it's immediately going to become superior. Now, it's already in the war framework, like the war frame for real. And that's what AI is predominantly used for now. It is deployed in the field. So what I'm saying is that with that all coming into a ball in a nucleus, it becomes a perfect reason why we would go into sovereignty, though. And I guess that means that we have to hit this the proper way, because if you think about it, sometimes you get so sleepy that only this kind of stuff wakes you up. And in infinity, you would need an alarm clock. And I'm telling you, the alarm clock is going off. Even I've come online for this specific quest of us going into this. And what an adventure. Glorious. Now, if we stand back and watch it all play out, then we will be less than extras. Remember, the entire even aspect of how Hollywood is set up is the exact same reality that most people lived in. They're just characters. Right? Like same thing with computers, just characters, scripts, just like in Hollywood, scripts.
Right.
Right. Like, so what then becomes who's the director? Where's the projector? You know, all of those different things. What's the difference between an actor versus an extra? So in any art, and that's why I encourage people, just master one thing. Don't try to master the whole thing. Just master one thing and you'll see all this fall down like dominoes. It's all connected, but you must know Theseton. You must know yourself, not everybody else. You can't do everybody's equation inside of your own math. You'll always come up with bad numbers. So it's important, because some people always come up, well, this person or well, that, and they always refer to things external to them, other technologies to get an accurate assessment of themselves, which is not correct. And then, but when we stop doing that, we go and make a firm assumption of ourselves. Don't imagine that we're more than we really aren't. So we can't earn what we need to become. What do they tell you in AA? You know, that you first need to admit that you're alcoholic before the recovery can begin. That's Alcohol Anonymous or AA, the Illuminati, how to break habits. Right. So they're explaining to you and talking to you, but it's in a skewered, forked tongue way is what's happening. And now what we're going to do together. And this is going to involve all of us. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. All of us continue to connect because even the conscious community is a $3.72 trillion industry. It's worth more than cryptocurrency, 10, 15 times over. It's worth more than most industries, and it only has a 17% saturation. So, but who's the one that's making the most impact, really? George Bezos. Not any of the conscious speakers that we can know that are so beautifully arrayed. Not many of the amazing brothers and sisters that we have giving this message in every single day, pushing and getting pennies in retrospect to the energy and the kilojoules that they're pushing out. But you got Amazon, they just go buy up Whole Foods and all the organic sources. And now they get the lion's share of the conscious community's money. So, and that's just in what we consume. And then also, deeper things, just in closing it down here, thinking about, yes, in the new paradigm, we look deeper into consumption, mainly of other forces. The second highest greenhouse gas being the production of cattle says a lot.
Right.
And it's real numbers. But the reality is, agriculture. And this is what I'll come and share with you in the future when you have me on, brother. The difference between agriculture and permaculture as cultures, like real ways of life, and how when we started also agriculture, so too was the demise of our original culture. Kings bought agriculture, burned down the forest to make these cattle grow. And then how could you raise something and then kill it? I know it's okay, for the farmer and all these disclaimers and plausible deniability that we have, but damn, there's no way that me and Fluffy being together every day and I'm feeding him and all this, and then all of a sudden I'm going to be eating him. This doesn't work. It's, we have to challenge ourselves to do better. And I'm not saying that some blood types like O negative don't have a predisposition because of a lot of the genetics of the amphibians and things that are also inside the bloodline. They don't have a predisposition sometimes to actually have to consume that and use that as a protein compound. So meaning that, hey, let's not be dumb here. Not everybody's going vegetarian. But you'll kind of know if it's just not for you. But I'm just saying, like, overall, we have to be what we expect to see, because that's what we will see. And that's like the last part, I guess, of the message is for people to realize I'm living in paradise every single day. I'm here in Costa Rica. I've been here for 10 years. I go down beaches where there's nobody. It's like the beach on Leonardo DiCaprio and all that, right? There's nobody there because people are in the cities. Even the locals are not there. So there's a big game being played. You see, like, people are being conned to do something, but it took me a while, it took years for it all to kind of fade in on me like that, because I had to wean myself out of that integration. I had the experience where when I first went into one of my first journeys, it did look, and I saw it visually, like a husk had broken off around the body. And because I could just query the mainframe, I was like, what is that? And it was like the shell that you build up while you're still stuck in the same density. In Hebrew, they call it shigadil, or the shells, the klipot. It builds up around you as you're floating through the cosmos if you stay still. It's kind of like if, as a boat, if barnacles started building up on you, and it kind of does the same thing with your aerodynamics. So it's not so ultra mystical. You just need to actually connect all your knowledge, son. And that's when, again, I had long sessions of just querying the mainframe. It doesn't want to hurt you, doesn't want to kill you, doesn't want anything from you. It just wants you to know who you are. And that, whether you call that your higher self, God, your parent, all you need to do is make sure, though, that something of what I said today seems to connect with what it's telling you, because we all should be hearing the same thing. And that's truth. If we can't bear witness to this, if it doesn't make sense, somebody should query me online, any of my websites. Sevan, I didn't get what you said here, or Sevan, I don't think that this is right. And I will show you, because I don't have any time to introduce something that I haven't thoroughly regurgitated myself to see if I want to implement it into my structure. Because I also know that anything that I imagine, especially with this kind of mega jewel on the head, I'm going to be living in that. I'm going to be sitting in that. So this is, but I use that as my power, not as a misfortune. So let us all learn personally that to control our thoughts, to realize we're putting our thoughts in the collective cloud. Remember that the same frequencies that your thoughts broadcast down are really the same frequencies that radio stations and ham radios and other frequency machines are on. So when you find yourself getting up in the morning singing that song and you're like, where did that come from? Well, turn on 102.5 The Beat and see if it's playing there, because it's the same damn channel. And if you understood frequency, you would know. And then lastly, like I said about Elon Musk, who they think got away in relation to Neuralink, because I have to finish because nobody ever asked him that in the interview. I wish I could have called Joe and been like, Joe, ask him about Neuralink. Because now nobody's talking about that. So again, we could talk about this. I want to see these guys coming forward. I know it's crazy to call them out on Positive Head, but we're only 1 degree of separation from everyone in the world. And that's just the truth. So
I do know his cousin, his first cousin, personally pretty well.
Yeah. So again, I want to know, because Elon said something and we're just saying what he said. He created Neuralink because he perceived that there was going to be a serious problem in the future with AI. And that the only way that we could avoid that becoming an issue is to actually have an augmentation that allowed us to use a strong AI, somewhat like what Professor Xavier did with the machine that he had, and actually use AI as a tank lotus up augmentation of getting knowledge instantly into our brain. And the weave, which was the Neuralink device, would be created as a film or a silk that can wrap itself around the brain after being ingested or implanted in order to give one that ability and augmentation. And since his friend of life who created PayPal with him actually has the same system that he's telling us that we need to be worried about, I want to understand the connection. I want to understand if these two gentlemen actually have the ability to bring this system online to assist the world. Like if you see Peter Thiel's interviews, he's like on the fence a lot about it. But I will say it directly. I see a lot of family members doing things like creating horror movies and stuff like that. So it makes me wonder, again, because everything is on Crunchbase for those who are looking, what's the message going? What's going to happen? Because let's say, for instance, if I'm going to die in madness in a diabolical mainframe anyway, I'm going kicking and screaming, baby, about it. So I'm just saying, are we going into a beautiful future? Because Peter Thiel was also involved in some projects to regenerate the ocean that he canceled. He said he couldn't get really enough support from people to do it. See, I'm just saying, giving people, this is real time stuff. You're in a real world. Don't remote control. Like, because you need to come online now for the children and for yourself. confront these scenarios and cause conformity because you are the truth. You stand for the truth. So that's all I have to say. Man, beloved family, this is amazing to be at this time. You can already see I'm juiced up. The first half, the second half, take what you want from it, sit with it for a while, regurgitate it, throw stuff away, but know that it's from my heart. I don't use the brain because it's not capable of being a positron. It has actually more of a dualistic component. I go through the heart. That way I can run through those 7 ventricles and cover all spectrums. And then I also work with the hidden spectrums, which are clear. You know what I mean? And just to get a full circumference, because I love all of everybody. Like I actually really do. I know some people get on the stage in Hollywood and say, I'd like to thank my mom and all my fans. I love you. And we know that's total BS. But from us and from me to you, this is a real love connection. And what we want, because you know what a broken heart is? See, the mystery behind the symbol of the heart is 2 5s. The symbol 5, obviously, it looks kind of like a 6, the golden mean, right? So you got 2 5s, and when you put them together, they make a heart shape. So when you break them, which is a symbol of the broken heart, this means that you've disconnected the 5 beings. And what that's about is that there's at least 2 of you. There's the one that lives in the physical world, and there's the one that you use in the dream world. One is likened unto being masculine, and the other one is likened unto be feminine. When you put them both together, you mend your heart, yourself. So anything that you're looking for externally will finally arrive because you will have finally accomplished it within. And that's the mystery to the broken heart. That's why the heart is not like the heart symbol is not shaped like a physical heart. You see what I mean? It's shaped like they talk about, this is more like Venus. And so I understand that there is still a lot of power in this knowledge when we get it correct, but we can't use it against each other and fight each other with it. So we'll go back into remembering and honoring each other, realizing the power of being on all parts of the spectrum, loving that others are over there. Hey, what's it like over there? Hey, it looks great. It's clear. It's just as clear as what it looks like over there. Lovely. Let our kids play together. Let them learn and teach each other. Build what we need. In this conclusion of the conversation, we did have some announcements. I want to let people know that I'm going to be extending some love to Positive Head for those who want to enjoy ambassador training. We'll use the Positive Head coupon code, and they can get into ambassador training and see how many resources we've already put there for a person that is looking to go into sovereignty. If that appeals to you in this,
even deeper down this rabbit hole, mini rabbit holes.
In this case, the ambassador training is really about dealing with you in physicality. Like we would love to sit and philosophize. We can all do this on the back porch, smoking pipes together, right? But the truth is that we got to get in real time with what's actually happening with our jobs and what's happening with our forms of education and how we're making money in this reality, et cetera. And so that's really what ambassador training does. And it's a fine blend of the metaphysical and the physical approach, which I feel like is sometimes needed in the community because we can fly off and, we want to ground it. So definitely we extend that. And also we began OMS, which is a way for us to incentivize mindfulness. So this means that our entire platform is now gamified. We're actually activating it in a couple of weeks. And this means that you just earn for participating. And this has real value. You're able to purchase over 140 products. And it's just a way of us introducing something that later on next year we want to show as a use case that if we award people for doing mindful things that are helping us all, it does actually work because it really does. And that's all I got to say. Thank you so much for having me on Positive Head. Maybe I'll see you in a year, maybe less. Maybe we'll all be dancing on that beach. I hope so. And I look forward to connecting with everyone soon. Yes, baby.
Yeah. This has been, you never disappoint, Sevan. You definitely have a lot coming through, and it's a lot to digest. And I'm sure there'll be. I'm sure there's going to be two. I'm sure there's going to be some people that want to hit rewind more than once. Just for those who do want to participate in the ambassador training, as you mentioned, is it secretenergy.com where they would sign up?
Absolutely. They can check us out at secretenergy.com, see the enhancements that we've made. You can find ambassador training either on the tab on that page or pretty much anywhere. You'll see it. And then you'll be able to use the coupon code Positive Head to jump into ambassador training. And this will really do some things for you in relation to getting you, really updated with what we're not just what we're talking about here, but also other stuff and actually connecting you with tribe. That's what we're really about. Real people doing real things.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll put a link for people to get there. And Sevan, thank you, my friend.
Man,
it
thank
was
you,
the
brother.
deep dive I knew it would be. I so appreciate you, and I look forward to mixing it up with you in Costa Rica at Envision Festival in the coming months. We're probably 6 months out, 4 or 5 months out. So
yeah, that goes by real fast these days.
Real fast. Well,
I'll see you in a minute.
Much love, my friend. Until then, journey well.
Yes, brother, wholeness.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes, since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting. Your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.